Cornell University in Ithaca, upstate New York. On behalf of the Emerging Markets Institute and eCornell, welcome to the webinar, Challenges and Opportunities of Artificial Intelligence, How Emerging Markets Can Cope. My name is Lourdes Casanova, and I am a senior lecturer and the director of the Emerging Markets Institute at Cornell University. The Institute organized its 14th annual conference on November 1st at Cornell Tech campus in Roosevelt Island in New York. In the webinar today, we will highlight the content of the different panels, as well as the case and the pitch competition, which were held the day before of the conference on October 31st. The conference is EMI's most important outreach activity and aims to open a space for dialogue and building bridges. The theme of the conference this year was Innovation and Transformation to Emerge Stronger, and we wanted to explore the opportunities that artificial intelligence offers in emerging markets. The last 5 years have been challenging for the world with dire consequences for the developing world. The pandemic, geopolitical conflicts and wars, societal demands that challenge our beliefs, and those societal demands related to sustainability and inclusive growth. At the end of 2022, about 2 years ago, OpenAI released ChatGPT and changed the world for AI. At the conference, innovation and AI was a subject that cut across the different panels. I wanted to acknowledge our partners, OECD Development Center, IFC at the World Bank, the Emerging Multinationals Research Network, Legatum Center at the MIT, Universidad de los Andes, ESPM in Sao Paulo. They all contributed to enriching the content of the conference. Also, at EMI, we want to encourage intergenerational dialogue, and Cornell students are very much part of this dialogue. We will have one, they also moderated the panels, Caleb Kavuma, Rafael Baldeón, but also Andres Suarez, Nilab Naik, Arya Mantareja, who is also here, and Iris Iris Arguedas and Neonica Chabra chair the case competition, and Iris will present that, and Osagi Oigagbe and Carlos Bernos chair the pitch competition. Part of the conference was to launch the EMI report written by Miroux and myself in collaboration with our partners. It will also talk about the content of the report. I now pass the word to Caleb Kavuma, who was co-chair of the conference. Caleb, the word is yours.
Thank you, Professor Casanova. Hi, everyone. My name is Caleb Kavuma. I'm the co-president of the Emerging Markets Undergraduate Club and one of the co-chairs of our 2024 EMI annual conference. This year, I had the privilege of chairing and founding our conference's inaugural African panel with the goal of rewriting the narrative about the continent in an academic context. A lot of the discussion in this panel regarding innovation, technology, and AI was centered around the youth on our continent and the power the youth has had in driving change. With Nigeria's economy emerging as one of the new global technological hubs and the Silicon Savannah, as it's called, in East Africa, the African continent is becoming an undeniable force in the technological world, where the youth have been and will continue to be the driving force behind that. Our distinguished speakers were able to give us a lot of insights into what technology has been and looks like, from Microsoft's new developments in East and West Africa to policy and new implementation of these technologies across the continent. The African panel was a tremendous success, and it was a great honor to host all of these speakers. And we look forward to continuing the discussion around Africa and its increasing presence on the world stage, and specifically how technology is driving the continent forward. I would like to pass on to Rafa, will continue forward.
Yeah, thank you, Caleb. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rafaela Baldian. I'm a sophomore in the Dyson School of Applied Economics and Management. And this year, along with Caleb, we had the honor of co-chairing the EMI annual conference. Thank you, Professor Casanova and Caleb, for highlighting the narrative of innovation, untapped potential, and opportunity in emerging markets, which is what this conference was all about and something that really resonated with me as I grew up in Latin America. As we reflect on the past week, the Emerging Markets Institute annual conference has once again proven the power of fostering collaboration and innovation when bringing people with a shared purpose together. Therefore, in this case, our shared purpose and the mission of the conference was innovation and transformation to emerge stronger. We explored how emerging markets can lead global progress by building bridges to enhance collaboration for symbiotic growth between nations. And specifically, as AI is on a global rise, this year we covered AI as a transformative tool with immense potential for emerging markets. In fact, we had an entire panel dedicated to AI, which was our Tech Horizons panel, led by thought leaders like Alvaro Arregui, James Codella, and Abhishek Mittal, who brought forward key insights. Alvaro demonstrated AI-driven startups are how they are tackling agricultural challenges in Latin America and empowering communities to scale these solutions. James shared how AI is breaking down barriers in education, healthcare, and finance, which is something we saw in our pitch competition, which Iris will talk about more later on. And Abhishek highlighted how AI is transforming business processes for highly regulated sectors like finance and insurance. These discussions showed how AI is being used as a tool for opportunity in emerging markets, but we also wanted to address the challenges of AI adoption, such as infrastructure gaps with data centers and energy supply. Which brings me to talk about some of our other panels, and specifically the Synergistic Success and Capital Insights panels, where we talked about the importance of mobilizing capital and about win-win investments, where investments are symbiotic and benefit local stakeholders as well as investors, to rise above these challenges that may limit implementation of such solutions. In these panels, we had a variety of finance sector professionals, from leaders in the sector like Mark Movius and Joyce Chang, to government and economic experts like Bradley Sidwell from the US Embassy in Kuwait. These discussions showed how the concept of business for good can empower communities while generating meaningful returns. Finally, we had our India panel, who brought in its unique takeaways, including Jayant Sinha, who is a former member of the Indian Parliament, and gave a critical emphasis on climate change as a fundamental challenge that India and emerging markets globally must address. And Samir Sain, who is a Cornell alum and co-founder of Everstone Capital, who left us with a powerful reminder, and I'll quote, "Vision without execution is hallucination," underscoring the power of action. And action was a sentiment that resonated across the entire conference. And in fact, Professor Frida and her students from the Cornell SMART program showcased their research projects in emerging markets, where they align business with actionable solutions for real-world challenges in emerging markets. Overall, this year's conference achieved so much, from the insightful discussions on AI to the global reach of the Cornell EMI case competition and the Mark Movius pitch competition, which brought together over 700 students from 15 countries, highlighting such global collaboration. And the caliber of speakers from Eduardo Padilla to Joyce Chang really raised the bar of the conversation, providing invaluable perspectives on challenges and opportunities in emerging markets. Now I'll pass on the floor to Aryaman, who was MC for the India panel of this conference. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I hope everyone's been having a good day. Thank you so much, Rafa, for making that beautiful introduction to the India panel. And I think I will talk a little bit more about the conference first, and then I will get into some of the key highlights that we had in the India panel. So, as Rafa mentioned, the panel was the whole conference was highly successful. We had a record number of participants in the panel this year, in the event this year. We had a lot of attention from the media. The participation from people in person was huge. And I think everyone had a really good time at the conference this year, and we were able to get a lot from it. I think Rafa did a really good job of explaining the panels individually, so I'm just going to go straight into the India panel. First off, I'm just going to introduce the panel with our speakers. So we had Samir Sen, who was the CEO and founder of Everstone Capital, which is a huge private equity fund based in Singapore, but they operate in multiple countries, including India. We also had Honorable Jayant Sinha, who was a former Minister of Finance and Civil Aviation at separate times for the government of India over the last 10 years. We had Praveena Rai. Ms. Praveena Rai was the COO of the National Payments Corporation of India and now has transitioned to a new role as MD of the Multi Commodity Exchange, which is huge. And we were able to talk to her about UPI, which is a very big topic of conversation these days. We had Shobha Vishwanathan, who was the vice president at Indiaspora. And the panel was moderated by Dean Vishal Kaur. So overall, we had a blockbuster panel. I think we had some amazing speakers and some very incredible insights from the panel. And to highlight some of these, first, I'd like to talk about what Rafa was mentioning earlier, just the green transition. The panel topic this year was Spotlight on India, the premier emerging market. So why is India the premier emerging market? Why are we calling it an emerging market and not a growing market? I think these were some of the questions that were raised by the panelists themselves. So one of the key reasons is the demographic dividend, right? So India at this stage has a majority of their population in the ages between 18 and 40. And I think that's where there's a huge opportunity for India. And that was one of the things that was brought up. The growth rate, of course, has been phenomenal. And it's something that people are keeping an eye out on. But I think one of the things that was discussed throughout the conference and was addressed by multiple panels was also geopolitical tensions and how India is in a key position to leverage the tensions, ongoing tensions between countries like China and the US, to emerge as kind of a manufacturing hub, but also to emerge as a leader in many fields, including in the field of AI and implementing such technology. One of these fields, of course, is the green transition. So as India is growing so rapidly, I think one of the key opportunities is for us to grow rapidly, but also sustainably. And I think Jayant Sinha did a really good job of explaining how India would be able to leverage this growth, but also be able to implement green technology as we grow. And I think that was one of the key highlights of the conference for me, for sure. Another thing that was brought up on the theme of innovation and transformation is how innovation, we have this perception of innovation as being the inventor of things and being the first in the market. But I think India does a really good job of innovation after a product has been released. Specifically, we were talking with Samir Sen about the pharmaceutical industry and how India is really making great strides in innovating across the supply chain and across the manufacturing portions of a generic drug. And I think that has the impact to help millions of lives, and India is really, really making huge strides there. We also got to speak about the Indian diaspora outside of India and how they're making amazing contributions. So to give a few examples, you can look at the CEOs of many, many multi-billion-dollar companies and Fortune 500 companies these days are CEOs of Indian origin. And that has really contributed back to the global image of India as an economy. And I think that's a huge factor as well. Another thing that we were able to discuss, of course, with Ms. Praveena Rai was the UPI system and how that has really transformed the Indian payments infrastructure. So I think the number of daily transactions of UPI is outstanding. It's in the billions at this stage. And I think that is really one of the biggest feats of technology and rapidly mass available technology that we have seen anywhere really. And it's setting an example for all the BRICS countries, but also just the developed world. And I think that it's really got India on the global stage as well. And lastly, one of the things that I'd like to discuss is also the strong strategic approach to foreign affairs that the Indian government has taken, and how we have really been able to leverage our foreign minister, who's amazing, as well as the government has really been able to leverage our position, both geographically but also economically, to create really strong alliances with the developed world and a lot of different countries there. So I think that was a big topic of conversation for the panel this year, and I think it was I definitely I learned a lot from the panel personally, but I think a lot of people took away a lot of these key insights, and I think it was highly successful. And of course, thank you to Professor Lourdes Casanova and all of our co-chairs here for organizing such a successful event. I'm just going to pass it on now to Professor Casanova to discuss the EMI report as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Aryaman, Rafa, and Caleb. Great job. As I said, the conference is the most important outreach event for EMI, and the report that we publish every year with my colleague Anne Miroux is the most important content that is summarized and is the result of the work done by the interns during the summer, by researchers that we have interns during the whole year. Caleb participated in the last year's report, and other students who are interested in research. So in the report, we always look at the emerging market multinationals. So there are plenty of studies on macro, how the economics of the countries in emerging markets are evolving, and we decided to concentrate on the private sector, on the business sector of those emerging markets. This year's edition, the 2024, is the 9th report, is published through e-commons of Cornell, is open access, and so as it is the 9th one, and we collaborate with all these organizations, IFC, OECD Development Center, the Emerging Multinationals Research Network. So we have panels that contribute to reflect on the reality in the business and the economic sector in emerging markets. This year we also had Zhengzhou University, and definitely India. We also look at ESG and the African Economic Club of New York. So emerging markets often feel like Sisyphus myth, going up, pushing the strong stone up the mountain, and then the stone falls back again, and you have to start all over again. So last year, 8th report, and this year, and also we'll continue the reflection next year, we look at emerging markets. What happened in the last years? So emerging markets, from 1800s till the 2000 were difficult years. China, India were down, and other emerging markets as well. We see since the year 2000, and here is a reflection of how much poverty has declined since the 1990s, and mainly since 2000. So this is a key performance indicator of emerging markets, and the poverty has been reduced tremendously. So because of that, because we see that emerging markets are doing well in a number of indicators, we want to be hopeful and say, because of the rise of China and India and other emerging markets, because of innovation, and we have discussed here AI, and my colleague Anne Miroux will continue. And then mobile payments, Aryaman referred to that, UPI, Pix in Brazil, and other systems of mobile payments, Alipay, WeChat Pay, unicorns, so technological advances, and also a strengthening of South-South relations. All this gives us hope for the future. Some argue, and it's the reality, that after 2015, 2020, this reduction of poverty has been reduced because of the challenges that I mentioned in the introduction. The poverty has been reduced tremendously in Asia, but has moved. Most of the extreme poverty right now is in sub-Saharan Africa. So the challenges exist, but we want to be optimistic because of what I mentioned. So then we also look at the growth of emerging market multinationals. One database that we look is Fortune Global 500. In the 90s, this ranking was dominated by Japan and US. They had 300 of the top biggest companies by revenues. And we see a similar trend since the year 2020, 2021. So China now, and some say, you know, China is replacing Japan. China now with US dominate the ranking. And at the same time, what has happened that didn't happen in the 90s is that at some years, there are more big companies from China than from the US. So this is producing a tremendous shakeup of the business sector. Of course, the biggest companies is a rich countries game. So you have China, also India, Brazil, Russia, Mexico, but much smaller numbers. But otherwise, we see US, Japan, Germany, UK, Canada, Netherlands, Switzerland, Spain, that have the big numbers. So there is a correspondence, and I then mention South Korea, because again, South Korea is now a developed country, but with a big number of big companies, and the country continues to do quite well. Then we also look at what we call billionaire companies, and again, Asia dominates 5,000 of the about 10,000 what we call billionaire companies, companies with more than 1 billion in revenues. Then comes US and Canada, Europe, Latin America, much less numbers, Oceania and Africa, much less. So we also look at the going global, so how the investments in greenfield and M&A. So again, if we look at the top 20 countries receiving investment flows, we see a number of emerging markets. We see China, we see also Brazil and Mexico, because they are very proactive in policies attracting foreign direct investment, but also India, Argentina, Indonesia, and Chile. Of course, US dominates, and Singapore, another rich country, Canada, France, and Germany. But we see advances in emerging markets because of the pro-investing policies that they have. If we look at the top 20 investors abroad, definitely again, a rich country game, US, Japan, Switzerland, Germany, Canada, France, Singapore, etc. We see China. China was very active before and now much less so in international markets, but also Brazil, Russian Federation, or India, but much smaller numbers. Then when we look at top greenfield investor countries by country of origin, again, which countries are investing the most? Again, if we look at 2023, US is double the numbers as China. Then we have, as emerging markets, India, very active in greenfield, Russia, Malaysia, Thailand, and South Africa. Another trend that is interesting to mention, and we'll see the same trend in M&A, is that China was very active before, and then 2019, 2022, the numbers went drastically down. So the effect, we can feel here the effect of the sanctions that started in the US, but then also Europe, with what has been called the trade war between US and Europe in China. So you see that the numbers of between 2019 and 2022 of international investments in greenfield, which means new projects, new factories, went down. But in 2023, we see again a resurgence of international investments of China in spite of the sanctions. These investments are now, before were directed mainly to Europe and US, and now we see that this is moving to emerging markets, mainly Asia, but also we see Morocco, Brazil, and other places. So again, a change, downturn, resurgence in 2023, and changing the geographical location. Okay, then we look at M&A, international M&A. We see, of course, that US dominates. US is in blue. We see Europe as well important, but this data from Europe includes intra-European M&A, so can be misleading because outside Europe is less active. China much less than US or Europe, but then again we see a resurgence in 2023. The resurgence is bigger in greenfield investments, in mergers and acquisitions, less, but nevertheless, and in spite of the sanctions, we see that the numbers are going up again. Far away from 2021, but definitely going up. Then geographical destination is what I just mentioned. So it was red, US, orange, Europe. So that was the most important destination. But we see in 2023, we see how the Asia is becoming the most important one. And then, okay, here we compare OFDI, so outward investments in the first bar. Then the next one is greenfield, and next one is M&A. We see a European Union plus UK, but this includes the intra-European investments, US, China, UK. What is interesting is that, again, China plus Hong Kong is much less. Okay, then I pass the word to Anne, who will talk about E20 plus one.
Yes, quickly about T20 plus one. This is a category of a list that we created about in 2000, well, from the start actually in 2015. And the idea was to have a group of countries that would be representative of the change in the global economy with this emergence of new economies that were not developed, but that were not developing any longer. An emerging economy is an economy who is transitioning from a developing to a developed country status, broadly speaking. So we have a number of criteria that we use to select this country, which is basically the GDP, the share of the country in global trade, and the poverty levels. It's a weighted index that we construct based on these four metrics. And at the end of the day, we have a group of about 40, 45 countries that could be considered as emerging. I'm sparing you all the details because there is an essential question that is being raised now, is that what is an emerging economy? Is the concept still valid? Actually, it's food for thought for economists of research. Anyway, we are very pragmatic. We needed a list of countries that would be represented. So out of these 45, we took the 20 plus one, and I will come to the one that had the largest GDP. The plus one refers to China, because as time goes, we realize that China is in a category in itself. It has characteristics of a developed countries and characteristics still of a developing economy, because there are about 400 million Chinese who are still at the poverty level. The bottom line is each year we revise our list, and this year we have our E20 plus one list. Usually the change is at the bottom, and this year Nigeria is out. It reflects actually the difficulty of the country over the past 3 to 4 years in terms of export revenues and even growth. So Nigeria is out this year. It may come back in 1 or 2 years from now. We don't know. And Peru has replaced in a way Nigeria in the list.
So maybe, and you can highlight the part of AI.
Yes, so I'm just going to give you a very brief snapshot of the discussion on innovation and AI. I won't dwell on innovation, just to say that it is definitely the rise of emerging economy as technology and innovation leaders is definitely one of the distinctive features of the past 25 years. So that's the first point. And there are many metrics that show that. One, for instance, is a Global Innovation Index. It's an index which is published by Portulans Institute, Sumitra Dutta, Bruno Lanvin, and WIPO that ranks countries according to their innovation capabilities and so on. In this index, over the past 10 years, there is a significant raise on the innovation ladder of not only China, who was number 35 10 years ago and is now number 11, but you also find India, Turkey, Vietnam, who have gone by about 20 or even 25 ranks. But that's an illustration, and there are many others. The second point on innovation that we highlight is that digitalization definitely has been a game changer. Actually, digitalization is behind the growing innovation capabilities of emerging economy. Such innovations are changing the life of people in emerging economies and have completely or profoundly transformed their economic structure and so on. So that's really the second point. Now, the third point about AI. Initially, we wanted really to zoom and work on AI in emerging economy, but we have to realize and be modest that we are at the beginning of an era, and there is still a lot to know and understand about the wide-ranging implication of artificial intelligence. It's not only for emerging economy, actually, it's for all countries in the world. The key question to some extent is, as I said, because of digitalization, emerging economies have moved up the innovation ladder, and somehow the divide between developed and emerging economy has been reduced. Now the question is that will AI increase or decrease the divide? And this is a key element. In developing economies, AI can act as a catalyst for accelerated development. And there are a number of examples that I will mention, but there are also conditions to be fulfilled so that the promises are realized. We, in the report, and this has already been mentioned, I think, by Rafaela, when she was and Caleb when they were talking about the panel, there are a number of key sectors where AI is already making a difference. That is, in those sectors we already had a digitalization, but with AI, we go one step further. For instance, in agriculture and food security, digitalization helped in terms of better organizing, harvesting method, and so on. But now there are AI-driven systems that enable farmers, for instance, to identify a disease. They take picture of a crop where they consider there is a problem, send it to the app, get back a diagnosis and recommendation for treatment, for instance. And there are a number of, this is a case in Brazil, Taranis is a company who does that. In India, for instance, there is a company called Cropin, or in South Africa, iRobotics. These are agri-tech companies that help farmers. They provide real-time information on soil condition, weather, and again, provide recommendation. Same thing with the weather predictions, recommending also better periods for planting methods. So some of these technology were already existing, but with AI, one definitely can go one step further. If I take, for instance, healthcare, it's also the same situation. You have distance diagnosis, and in addition to that, now immediate, if you want, assessment of the situation and proposal for a cure. And a large number of companies are doing that. You have Babylon Health, for instance, in a country like Rwanda, who is not a rich country, just I would say in the middle. You have MTBA in Kenya, you have QR AI in India that diagnoses almost immediately with the X-ray, the tuberculosis, or the scans of the blood sample for malaria. So this, we go one step further. And another sector which I would like to highlight, where digitalization has already made a difference, but again, one step further with AI is the financial services. Mobile payments have been possible, enabled by digitalization. But now with AI, there is a possibility, for instance, to assess credit scoring for people who have not credit history, just through a system that look at smartphone data, social media activity, utility payment, online transaction. That between us raises a number of questions about privacy. But at the same time, it offers to financial institutions the possibility perhaps to provide loans to people who do not have credit history. So again, this machine learning, these algorithms, enables the digitalization transformation to go one step further. So this is a point that we are highlighting with a number of examples in the report. That being said, these are the opportunity, the potential for change. But there are conditions and the challenges are numerous. One of them were already mentioned was the level of infrastructure, obviously, with a server and all the levels, internet speed and you name it. You have the skills, second challenge, but I'd like to highlight the data accessibility, because at the end of the day, many the leaders in the AI area, their gold mines are the data. And this is an issue for many emerging markets where data collection may not be as perhaps organized. And the last point is regulatory framework. I just mentioned the credit scoring issue, but depending on how the algorithm is designed, you may accentuate already existing biases against population. So that's the key issue. And the regulatory framework is a question, by the way, not only for emerging markets, but for almost all countries around the globe. So you have these four types of challenges. You add to that the cost for enterprises because servers and computing resources, AI software development, they require massive investment. That's another point to take into action. And I would like to perhaps end up with the last one, which is the geography of AI and the implication it has for emerging economy, because a few companies dominate AI and two nations dominate AI, the US and China. And the competition between the two not only has impact for China, but has impact for the other economy, including emerging markets, for instance, in terms of accessibility to what used to be open software, AI software. So these are key issues which will determine the future of AI. Now, we are just at the beginning of the AI area, and it's very difficult to predict the net impact it will have. At the end of the day, we are entering uncharted territory, because I believe that really few people grasp the full implication of AI for economies and society. But there is a key question, which is, one thing is clear, is that emerging economies need to be better equipped to harness the potential of AI. And there is one remark that we can do. In 2023, there were about 34 countries that had a national AI strategy. Out of these 34 countries, only 4 were emerging economy. In Latin America, you had Uruguay and Brazil. Interestingly, no Brazil, for instance, not yet. And in Asia, you had China and India, and that's it. So that's really raises a number of questions. There is a lot to work for economists and studies and policymakers to basically make AI good for people in emerging economy, and I would say for the planet. And I'll stop there.
Thank you. So now we pass the word to Iris, who will co-chair of the case competition. So please, Iris.
Thank you, Lourdes, for the introduction. Hello, everyone. My name is Iris Arguedas, and I am a current second-year MBA student at Johnson. Along with Niyonika Chabra, as Lourdes was mentioning, I had the privilege to lead the 2024 Cornell EMI coordinating case competition. The main goal of this case competition is to bring together students from universities from around the world to address real-world challenges faced by businesses and also managers in emerging markets specifically. This year, we focused on Vietnam as the country of interest, and electric vehicles as the industry, with a particular emphasis on VinFast. We had an incredible turnout with around 700 participants represented by 154 teams from 48 universities across 15 countries. After a careful review, we ended up selecting 8 finalist teams that presented their solutions one day before the conference. And the results were from 3rd place, we had Carlson School of Management, University of Minnesota. 2nd place, we have Ritsumeikan Asia Pacific University from Japan. And in 1st place, we had Vinh University from Vietnam. Something that is really relevant to mention is that the quality of the presentations was exceptional this year, making the selection process really difficult. So big thank you to all participants for their hard work, and also to the judges who were supporting us evaluating this great teams and great presentations that they develop. Also, I would like to thank VinFast for their invaluable support throughout the process. They actually hosted 3 of my colleagues from the MBA program who visited VinFast and who had like conversations with them to incorporate these insights into the case that they build. And last but not least, thanks to Cornell for making the case competition possible. Also, I would like to highlight the 2024 Cornell EMI Mark Mobius pitch competition. This competition was led by my colleagues Osagi Ogiagbe and Carlos Eduardo Bernos. And this year we also had really good participation on the pitch competition, with 36 startups pitching and like sending their presentations from 26 countries who participated. The winner of the pitch competition was iOpticrane, a company that uses AI for crane operations, from the Hong Kong Polytechnic University, emerging as the winner, as I mentioned before. So special thanks to Mark Mobius for making the pitch competition possible. As mentioned earlier, this is something really relevant that happens in the same period of time as the conference. Last year we had it in the same day. This year we decided to split them up. So we had the finalists on October 31st at Cornell Tech with strong participation both in person and online. We are excited about this year's success specifically, and we look forward to the next year's competition. So now I'll pass the word to Lourdes to answer some of the questions we've received so far. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It is a tremendous amount of work, all done by volunteer students who want to learn, who want to expand the networks of Cornell University to other universities all over the world, and definitely both the case and the pitch help us doing so. So I'll now go for the questions to the audience, from the audience. So the first question, and I'll answer myself this first question, a question from Peter Stephen. So besides sanctions, were investments also impacted by COVID during those times? Of course, definitely COVID made, the global value chains that had been organized over the last 20, 30 years, and that efficient global value chains were the name of the game. And then from efficiency, we moved to resilience, and much more so after the Ukrainian war started. So then other considerations like, okay, there were sanctions, and you had to from investment to disinvestments. So definitely investment flows have changed, will change, have changed. Okay, I would add less, maybe more slowly than initially thought. But yes, they are changing. We see, and Ariama mentioned that about in relation with the Indian panel. So how India, but also Vietnam or Mexico have opportunities in this as becoming more manufacturing hubs for the world. Right now, the one that is mainly is China. So we see these changes, and definitely COVID was, I would say, the turning point for global value chains that were rethought and reconsidered and reorganized, and we are still in this process. Okay, then another one that is very also interesting and that I will answer myself, and then I'll pass the others to Anne. So another question from Leslie Voigt that says, has anyone considered the environmental aspect of AI on a global basis? So let me just give you one data point. There are more than 600 million people, 685 million people in the world that have no access to electricity. Of those, 170 are in Africa. So definitely, as we hear, AI has a tremendous need of servers that are bigger and bigger and that need electricity. And actually, this country is considering to open more nuclear facilities, nuclear energy facilities for those servers. We have a number of initiatives in this space. So imagine the challenges for emerging markets where, and again, I mentioned Africa, that have zero access to electricity. So as my colleague Anne mentioned before, definitely for emerging markets, the infrastructure deficits are very important. So how can you think of an AI policy or an AI strategy if you don't have access to electricity? So definitely plenty of infrastructure challenges need to be solved. Okay, so then I go to other questions, another one from Peter Stepan. So how can AI stimulate economic growth with job and industry creation? And that I will request my colleague Anne to answer this question.
Yes, thank you, Lourdes. As I mentioned a moment ago, first, this is a question that is very much debated. There is no consensus on it. One of the reasons I believe is that we do not yet fully grasp all the wide-ranging implications of AI. For the time being, there are, at least from the experience that we have and the examples that we give in the report, yes, AI stimulated growth because the impact on the agricultural sector can be quite important in terms of resource management, ability to, adapt to the weather conditions and so on. So same way in terms of, health or finance. I mentioned this ago. So yes, AI can stimulate economic growth, but for the time being, the point is that there are a number of challenges to solve or address in emerging economies. And the issue is that the more time goes, the wider the gap between those who have or are able to and the others. And that may be the most crucial issue. So yes, for the time being, AI can stimulate economic growth in specific sectors in emerging economies, but we do not really know to what extent the replacement of workers, for instance, along some value chain, what will be the actual impact? And that's an issue which is for not only for economists, but also for policymakers. That's my first answer. There was also a question which was by Leslie Voigt on how the success in emerging market contributed by the lower pay scale compared to the US and the UK. Definitely yes. That was at the source of, if you want, the globalization or the migration of a number of industry from the so-called north to the south. So that definitely was a key issue at a time where basically barriers to entry were trade barriers were disappearing. Actually, the open global environment that we have known during the first quarter of century has been a crucial factor in the emergence of, in the growth of emerging economies. So you have basically production, cost of production differentials and open trade more or less. And these are changing. The second one, trade openness, is definitely going through very, very hard time. I don't think we will go back to the period we knew. And it's essential for emerging economy because this is at the basis of their growth and development. But also we have for instance, the labor issue, like in China, the cost differential is not as large as it used to be. So that's an important point also to keep in mind.
Let me just add that, for instance, face recognition or image recognition requires a tremendous amount of labor because you have to code absolutely every single small characteristics of a face or of an image for the image or the face to be recognized. So definitely this is a very tedious work. And definitely a lot of this is done in sometimes remote areas in China where labor is cheaper, or India or other emerging markets. So yes, we see that, and we see that happening as well. There is also another question from Lana, and maybe we all can answer. Does the issue of limited data access and high processing costs make AI services prone to monopolization, as they are likely to be dominated by large companies? Maybe my colleague Anne can give a first answer. This is a general question, not only for
I
emerging
would
markets.
say yes. For the time being, perhaps time will change, and that is also why there are a number of regulations that are being considered, including the EU, because I'm based in the European Union, and there is that fear that the EU is going to be the laggard behind the US and behind China. So the regulation is being put in place to try to deal with this issue, not to prevent the other from moving forward, but to have a framework that ensures that a number of rules are respected, and this could help avoid this monopolization. But limited data access is definitely a key for an explanatory factor of the power of a big AI company for the time being, because at the end of the day, the access, it's because of the massive amount of data and the ability to treat it that you go and develop through the AI industry. So yes, for the time being, I would believe that the barriers to entry are very, very high, and this is why it's very disturbing and concerning, in my view, for emerging economies. You may have big ones like India that may get ahead, or definitely China is already a couple of others, but the others is a huge question mark, because you have the size of the market. So there are all these barriers to entry who come into the picture. So for the time being, yes, it's prone to monopolization, and that's what we are observing too.
Okay, I'm going to ask Iris, because Iris is the new generation, to answer this question, because that's for her and the MBAs. And so, of course, there is the fear that AI will remove a lot of white-collar jobs. So we have seen, so how can, let's be positive. How can AI stimulate economic growth with job and new industry, with the creation of new jobs and industry creation? Iris, this is for you to be optimistic, and that will be the last question for today, and you close the webinar.
Yeah, I think for me, and what I think is that it's not that they're going to substitute the jobs that they are. It's more that they're giving people the tools. And I would like to share an example that we saw in a class for a case that was like super relevant for me. So we saw something on how AI was getting involved into the production of coffee, and how it was like implementing in the quality, and like make sure that there was like a fair payment to the farmers as well, and like understanding when the cherries for coffee was the most relevant to actually be with the quality that they have, so that they can sell in a higher price. So I think that sometimes, or at the beginning, it's more that the people scared on how they can take jobs away, but actually how I see it is that they're not like always they would be like people needed to do other types of things. So it's more like complementing how people are actually seeing or like doing their current jobs to make them better and to have like a better quality. So I don't know if that's like way too optimistic, but like what I've seen is that there's a lot of potentials that it's been going like it can actually help in the future instead of like taking jobs away.
Thank you very much, Iris. And I would like to finish the webinar with this optimistic view about AI. We have to be optimistic. We are in an academic institution, and we always have to give hope, and we bring the hope from the new generations. So with this, I would like to close the webinar and thank, of course, my colleague Anne, that we write the report, and so many students. It takes a village to build content and also to build content that is relevant for the next generation, and an event like the conference that brings so much knowledge from all over the world, and the intergenerational dialogue. So thank you, Iris and Nionika for the case competition, Osagi and Carlos for the pitch competition, then Caleb, Ariaman, Rafa, Andres, and so many others, Nilam, and so many others for the conference committee, the EMI team, Daniel, Elnaz, Dimitrios, Avi, Shefali, Daniela, Sasha, so many that made possible this extraordinary event that we run on a shoestring and that we make possible and will continue. So for next year, please save the date, always the first Friday of November. November 7th will be next year, 2025. And we will also, as always, look for a theme that is relevant for that year, relevant for emerging markets and all over the world. Thank you, eCornell team, for these webinars, this opportunity to reach further into the alumni of Cornell and wider audience. Thank you all.